Hello and welcome to the latest webinar from Cloud Assess. We hope you enjoy.
Rob from Cloud Assess here. We'll just get through the introductions and that'll hopefully give people a bit of time to arrive late and get into the webinar. I'll just say thanks to everyone for coming along. Maybe I'll mute everyone else. Sorry, mute all. Okay. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming along today. There's a lot of names that have been with us for a while. People have been with us for a while. A lot of new names on the attendees, so that's great. Thanks for coming and seeing what it's all about. In light of the current situation and based on a bit of feedback, we've changed the format a little bit of these webinars. So this week, or on this occasion, we've got the pleasure of hearing from Kerry Buttery. So we'll introduce Kerry in a wee while. She's going to do a bit of a PD session for us, which is great. So the reason for the changed format, as we know, we're all going through some challenging times at the moment, and the wants and needs of everyone are somewhat different. And it seems to have come pretty quickly, even though it may have been on people's agenda for a while. There's been some pretty sudden changes, kind of really driving the importance of being able to connect to everyone online and doing a good job of that. So the session is twofold. We've had some feedback from previous sessions, from the webinars. We always hand out surveys, and we had some suggestions on different formats and content that people would like to see. So we've taken that on board. In light of the current situation, we also want to try and share information with people and connect in a bit of a different way, hence the format here. And then if you've read or kept up with our newsletters, you'll have seen that we've been looking and focusing on making some product changes to support people in this kind of distance learning and remote context in a bit of a deeper way. So we're really looking to just get people across the new product changes that we've done to support that. So moving into the agenda, really, so this is the introduction. As I say, thanks for coming along. We've got a guest speaker, Kerry, which we'll go on to her slide in a second. We'll be looking forward to hearing what she's got to say. Then we've got some great feature updates, which aren't going to take too long. I think Kerry's going to be about half an hour going through some of her stuff. Then we've got some new feature updates in terms of the new learner app, what that's going to look like. So we'll have a bit of a look and a bit of a review of that and step through a few of the different screens. We'll have a look at some of the library updates, and some of that comes hand in hand with the new student app or the learner app, and some of that is just some changes that we've plugged in recently. And we've also got a new post feature that we'll have a quick look at, which is live and active and available now. As we're going, if you've got questions that are relevant as we go, I'm going to kind of facilitate the session, or try and facilitate the session while Kerry's talking. So there is a chat space. I need to share my screen, apologies. Desktop 2, thanks Kerry. So there's, I'm going to try and facilitate the session as we go. So hopefully I'll be able to capture the questions that come up in the chat space. So please ask questions as we go, and we'll try and plug those in if they're relevant and appropriate. If not, we'll try and catch up with those at the end. That's not a drama, and we'll have a space and a bit of a time for a Q&A session, whether that's on Kerry's content or the features and the information that you're being presented with. Without any further ado, I will just introduce Kerry Buttery. So Kerry's got a wealth of information in the vet sector, and we've done a range of work with Kerry over the years, so we're very excited that she could join us today. She's part of the Vet Nexus and the Vet Gurus group, so you've got her contact details there, and she provides and the team there provide a range of services around compliance and advice for registered training organisations. And then very exciting as well, they've got a conference coming in a few weeks' time, launched under the banner of the Vet Gurus, and that's really about technology in the vet space. And as you'd all be interested. We're very interested and excited about that. It's going to be a great opportunity. Unfortunately, not face-to-face as it was originally planned, but probably relevant that it's online in the current context. Are you there, Kerry?
I sure am, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for asking me to be here.
It's all right. Well, I'll hand over to you and jump onto your first slide. If you've got any, if I'm not quite keeping up, make sure you give me a nudge and we'll go from there, hey?
Will do. Thanks, Rob.
Right. Thanks, Kerry. Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. As Rob said, this is going to be about a 30-minute session heading through a range of things in terms of compliance and assessment, or online assessment. So what are my top tips for making sure that we remain compliant? When Rob and Helen asked me to do this, we thought we would go through 3 top tips. But then when I was actually writing it, there was sort of an extra one that I thought was going to be very pertinent to the way that you can use Cloud Assess. So I thought we'll throw that one in there as well. So it's actually going to be 4, with one of them being a bit of a smaller one. Now, I'm not going to give away what they are in the session overview, so you'll have to stay tuned to see what each of these top tips are. But first of all, if we head to the next slide, thanks, Rob, I'll get you to type in the chat. If you haven't been to one of my webinars before, I actually make you do a bit of work. So I get you typing in the chat quite a bit and contributing. So what do you do when you keep evidence of a skills observation if you do it online? What sorts of things do you keep as evidence? So type in the chat and we'll see what different people are doing. And we've actually built out some things here in terms of what you can do in Cloud Assess.
Shut the front door, Bridge.
So we've got Alison set a checklist, Kylie set a checklist, Sue has uploaded documents. So I take it from uploaded docs that it might be your checklist that you're using. Andrew's got photo evidence, screenshots from Kylie, videos, that's a good one.
Mum's online doing it.
Okay, so pictures, videos, photos, videos, checklists, voice record. Observation checklists. Now this is really, really good to see that everyone's saying that we're going to have a checklist. Trudy said new to this, so need to know what will work. So a portfolio of evidence or documents, photos, etc. Video, audio evidence. Good one from Ash, manager assessors report. Okay, so a whole range of things that you've said there. Kylie said a work product. Okay, so when we have observations, and we're going to talk today about practical and theory, and also third party. So someone's just typed in third party reports. So we're going to have a range of things that we talk about today. But when we focus in on a skills observation, so when we're actually watching someone do something, we have to keep evidence of what that is. So yeah, we'll go to the next one. So when we go to the user's guide, and this is where we always need to go back to. So the standards themselves are what we're audited against, but then the user's guide gives us that extra information. We can't be audited against the user's guide, but it tells us what we're looking for. So the user's guide under standard 1.8, it gives us a little explanation about reliability and what we need to have. So we need to have our evidence criteria or our decision-making rules that we're going to judge that quality performance on. Now, I'm really, really pleased to see so many people putting that you've got your observation checklist, you've got checklists, observation checklist, all that assessment criteria is one that's come up. We've got all those things listed because something that I've come across quite a bit is people tend to go, well, this is an observation, we're just going to do a video and we're going to upload that video and that's everything that we need. But it's not. We need to be able to show reliability, and to do that, we need to have that decision-making tool. So one of the most common non-compliances with online assessment when it comes to the practical is just uploading a video or just uploading photos and saying, that's the observation. We need to actually show, well, how have we made a decision that that observation has been appropriate and meeting all the guidelines of what we say is industry acceptable. So what you can see on the screen is that we have our, just back one. Thanks, Rob. We have our model answers, if that was, a theory, but we would have our descriptions of observations needed to assess skills. Okay, so we need to have, that's straight from ASQA's Users Guide. So ASQA have put that in writing. We'd have to have our descriptions of our observations, so our observable behaviours. So even if you're uploading a video or you're uploading photos, you still need to have that observation checklist. That is what you're going to show as your decision-making tool. So we'll go to the next slide. Thanks, Rob. So tip 1 is about decision-making tools, and this goes across the board. So this isn't just for observations, but also, like people have said, their practical work or portfolio of evidence, documents, anything that we're making a decision on, we need to have decision-making tools. And this is whether it's face-to-face, in a booklet, or online. Regardless of how we do the assessment, we need to be able to show how we've made a decision. So we'll go to the next slide. And our decisions might be shown on an observation checklist. It might be shown on our portfolio checklist, which is one of the questions put there. It might be on a project checklist. Generally, your theory questions are going to have your model answers, and it's going to have your list of things there to show these are the things that we're looking for. But it's a little bit different in an observation or a portfolio, where it's not answers that you're showing, it's what are you looking for in that portfolio. So therefore, we're going to have observable behaviours in our observation checklist. We're going to have a list of characteristics that we're looking for in our portfolio or our project. And that then is what we're going to be marking off. So if we go to our example observation checklist in Cloud Assess, this is what it's going to look like. So you're going to have your items that your assessor is going to be looking for. So for example, uses the file search functions to locate and open files and folders. Can create a new folder, can create a subfolder. So we've got all these items that the student needs to be able to do that we're going to tick off. It's not listed as performance criteria. These are going to be based on what we're looking for, and then we map each of these to the performance criteria. Now, as you can see at the bottom, you can upload additional evidence. So you can upload a video or audio or whatever else that you want to upload to support that. Keep in mind that this is going to strengthen the evidence that you've captured. So quite often, if we do this in a face-to-face environment and we are actually watching the students in the same room, we're not really going to be necessarily doing a video recording. We can, and then uploading it. So, you know, if we're in the same room, we may do that to have strengthened evidence of what we've seen. And that way we can actually do moderation of that evidence so that we can make sure other assessors are looking for the same things. But when we are in this online environment that we are right now, and quite often you're not in the same room and students are going to be giving you video evidence of what they're doing, whether that is recording directly into something like Cloud Assess or taking a video and then uploading it, and then you're going through and marking that as the assessor, you're going to have that evidence there as this is the way you're going to collect it, and then you're going to fill out the observation checklist on what you're looking at in the video. So that's the difference between the face-to-face environment and the current online environment where students are submitting those videos. The question there on the example shown, there's no required additional comments. Is that okay? We have some people tell us it's not. So this is, Rob, I might get you to say, can we have a comments column on the right-hand side? Is that possible, or is that somewhere that we type underneath each item?
Yeah, it all comes down to the design that the customer wants, you know, whether you wanted comments on each row or whether you wanted a comments field at the bottom for you to have miscellaneous comments. It just comes down to the design of the instrument and what the client requires, you know.
Yeah, so you can put your comments column down the right-hand side, or you can put it across the bottom. I'd always be having somewhere where you can provide those comments. Yeah, in terms of compliance, yeah, I'd always be having somewhere to put the comments, but like Rob said, you can put it in different places where you'd like to do that. So I would usually put one down the right-hand side so that you can put it on the same line as each item. And then I would probably have an overall one as well at the bottom so that you can have an overall feedback around maybe you're telling the student they need to do this again, or, you know, this might be number 2 of 10 observations that you're going to be doing. And so you're providing feedback for their next one. So that's one of the things that we need to be looking at, is making sure we've got this decision-making tool, whether it's observations or a project or a portfolio of documents, and it doesn't follow performance criteria, it follows what you're actually wanting to see. So the performance that you want to see, or the items that you want to be able to see that the student can do in a portfolio. So if it's documents and you're looking to see that they can change margins, then that's what you're going to have in your checklist, that they've changed the margins appropriately. And it might be that you've got some items that are okay for the students to see, and then you might have additional ones that you might have underneath these that you only want the assessor to see, which is possible to do as well. So if you're in a paper-based version, you'd probably have a student version of the observation checklist, and then an assessor version where you might have in red, you know, extra items that you've written in to give further explanation. So if it was, let me see, can create a subfolder. So maybe we're telling them in their instructions what the subfolder is supposed to be called and where it's supposed to be located. And that might be included in the assessor version so that the assessor doesn't have to go back to the instructions, and it can give them a bit of clarity there about what it is exactly that they're looking for. So anything that might be in the instructions to the student, which makes it easier for the assessor to look at, you could put in those instructions to the assessor as well to provide that extra clarity. So that's the first top tip. Is there any questions around observations online and the sorts of things you need to be including before we move on to the next one? No, good, excellent. So a bit of more work for you now. When it comes to third-party reports, we had a few people mention that. How do you currently gather and store your evidence of your third-party reports or supervision? What process do you follow? E-profiling, yep, so they can come in and write that or report directly in the profile. What do most people do? Do we get them to fill out forms and upload them? Is it online? Okay, Nicolette said document in the hard copy learner guide to be signed off. Alison, paper document, then held on file. Sue, forms and uploads. This is what most people are doing, is forms that are then uploaded. Lucy said saved as an assessment in Cloud Assess. Excellent. Specific third-party reports, paper-based assessment, complete form in Cloud Assess. And some of you are picking up on, this is the extra little thing that I've thrown in. So tip number 2 here is third-party logins. Now, I've not come across any other LMS or assessment platform so far that's been able to let you do this. So this is pretty awesome. And that is to have third-party logins. So a way for that third-party supervisor, workplace supervisor, to be able to log in and submit a third-party report attached to a student. That's pretty awesome. It makes it so much more streamlined, okay, so that you don't have to go doing all of that scanning and uploading. And there's just a few things that you need to keep in mind, which these things are all taken care of for you, but it's things like making sure that evidence is from the supervisor. And a way of doing that is that that supervisor has password protection, they're logging in, they need to make sure that they agree that they're not going to be providing their password to anyone else and those sorts of things. So making sure that they're understanding of the security that's around this. And it attaches that to the learner account. So it's not floating around somewhere else. So it sits as your evidence for the learner, which is really, really good. As part of the compliance as well, part of making sure our third-party reports are valid and authentic are making sure that it's coming from the right person, which we're making sure in terms of password protecting and those sorts of things, but also to make sure that they are a valid person to be able to make comment. and also that it's authentic around, well, this has come from them, it's secure, etc. So if we go on to the next slide there, this one is an example of the sorts of things that you're going to have to do to make sure that you're collecting the right evidence and that it's coming from the right person. So our third-party details, now it's just great that you can do this online rather than having to fill out a form, but I'm just seeing that the note from Rob that the learner can't edit the third-party record type, which is really good. So that keeps that secure and authentic as well. So what you can see on the screen at the moment is sort of a verification or a validation of who that third party is to make sure that they are the right person to be able to provide comment. And this is often brought up at audit as to, well, is it the student's uncle that's providing comment around their capability, and have they really watch them in the workplace? Can they really comment? Or maybe it's someone that they work alongside rather than their supervisor. So ASQA have said that we really need to be careful around who is providing comment and being able to show why they can provide comment. So items that we've got on the screen, such as relationship to the student, their qualifications and experience, these are all the sorts of things that you want to include in that third-party report before you get to the stage where you're talking about what that student can do in the workplace. So we're wanting to confirm the validity of the third party, and then they're going to go through and provide comment, and we make sure that it's going to be around observations rather than listing our performance criteria. Just like our observation checklist, we need to provide that explanation. Okay, so it's good that some of you have said that you weren't aware of that facility. So that's something that's really, really good with Cloud Assess that you can do. And Rob might be able to give you an update on that a little bit later. So throw any questions in that you have around that as well. Question from Clint there. What will the supervisor see? How do you send it to them? And do they have it on the dashboard? Rob, I'll pass that one over to you to answer. If that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Clint. Thanks, Kerry. Yeah, literally the third party has a login, and it's very similar to the student style login. It's a very simple interface that they've got access to, and they'll literally have a to-do list with all the records that they've had released to them by the assessor. So the assessor that's looking after the student will release the third party reports to the, or the third party records to the third party. And the third party might look after multiple trainees or apprentices in their workplace. Hence, they've got a to-do list where they can see individual records and pick them out and complete them and save them and submit them when they're ready. So essentially, instead of an assessor releasing work to the student, they release work to the third party, and then the third party submits. So it's essentially you're swapping over the person who does the submission, the student, for the third party for the record. And it's not always a perfect solution, because every organization is different. If you've got a large enterprise RTO where the third parties work for the company, it's a solution that works really well. Other organizations have used forms, and that seems to work pretty well, and associate those forms with the student. Other RTOs have left them as student-led assessments. So the student's login will be the one filling them in, but then we've got this authenticity kind of conflict. So there's a range of options that we've worked with, but this one's really kind of tied in on providing that unique login with that authenticity and that control.
I think it's fantastic. It's something that people are asking for, and this is the only place I've seen it. So really, really good. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. So when it comes to your work with students, this is a big one for online. How do you make sure that the work presented by the learner for assessment is their own work? So what do you do at your RTO? What are your workarounds? How do you make sure? Because this is probably the #1 issue that comes up with audits of online. So Kylie has said interview them randomly, Q&A, yep. Sue has said signature and IP addresses, yep. Andrew, get them to take a photo with their name tag and themselves doing the work. Yep, exactly. So we've got a range of different things, face-to-face declaration and questions, sign off on a submission declaration. Excellent. So there's a whole range of different things that we need to basically put together to provide a solution to this one. And you're all coming up with those common ones. Yeah, the signature declaration when they submit, this is my own work. They're basically signing off to say that it's their own work. They have a login that's unique to them, and we tell them, don't give anyone else your login details because that's you signing in. But I suppose the other thing is, okay, well, when it's online and they're at home and they're working on something, how do we know that it's them working on it and not someone else that's already done this before? Or, you know, getting too much help. So the comments that a lot of you have got coming up around the questions, asking, you know, interviews, asking questions, that's a really, really good point, because you're going to have that conversation with them to make sure that they understand what it is that they've written. So Acacia said, ask questions and see if the answers match what's written and submitted. And that's exactly it. That's going to be your best way of verifying that the students know what they're doing, by adding in those authenticity questions. So that's tip 3, authenticity. So you've already identified most of these. So a student declaration. Student identification, I think, was from Andrew. So, and ASCA has actually said that that's something that you should be doing, is getting students at the start of a session. So if it's a Zoom session, like Kylie said at the end, see them on Zoom and shared screen, get them to hold up their identification so that you can actually verify that it is them. You know, I suppose if you've had them in class for 6 months already and you know who they are, and it's just that now we've had to go online, well, you're going to know who they are. But a lot of the time when we study online, you might not see these students very often. So if you were to see them online, you might not recognize them from the list if you've got a lot of students. So by holding up their identification, they're proving to you, yep, this is who I am. You can sign off and say, yep, I know that that's who is supposed to be getting assessed against this unit. And the last one I've put there, competency confirmation conversation. So if we have RPL, we say it's a competency conversation. I've added the word confirmation in there because you've already done all of these assessments, and basically you're checking to see, well, are you able to confirm for me that you understand this, explain the process that you followed for such and such. Where did you find this information? When you went researching this, what sorts of search terms did you put in? So it's not like you're asking them the same questions again because they've already answered them. It's more around working out, did you do this work? What were the processes that you followed? Where did you find difficulty? And having that conversation with them to make sure that they've gone through the process themselves and they have picked up that knowledge, and it's not just copied and pasted and those sorts of things, because copy and paste answers are another issue. Students aren't really showing you that they understand the content if they're copying and pasting from a learner guide. So we need to make sure that what they're answering is going to show that they've got that authentic evidence. We've got a couple of questions there. From Kylie has said, isn't there a privacy issue if multiple in class? Yes, so if you've got multiple students in your class, then you might use the breakout rooms. So if you're on Zoom, you've got the ability to use breakout rooms by going into your settings. And so go onto your zoom.us account rather than the little app, go into the website account, go into the settings, and you can actually set up some breakout rooms. So you might have a breakout room there where you can go and check identification for students. And if they come on 10 minutes early and you go in and check identification and then they're in the room and you know that you've already gone through that process and checked their ID. You might have them submit that to you differently by taking a screenshot and sending it to you privately in email or in the chat so that you've got that there so you can just verify that that's them. So there's a few different ways of getting around that privacy issue. Also, if you've got multiple people in your sessions and you're recording them for assessment, make sure you've got consent from your students for recording for privacy. And Kelly, what would you do if you think they don't understand the content? That's when you would say, look, part of demonstrating that you are competent is that you can go through this conversation, and it seems that you aren't able to articulate what we need you to know. So therefore we need to set some extra work for you to do to be able to show that you are competent in this unit. So it might be another set of assessments. It might be that you determined that there was a particular area that needed further work and that you would do something else in that particular area. So it's like doing a bit of an adjustment to the assessment. If you had a scenario that they were answering before, maybe you set a different scenario, and it's just that further evidence that you need to gather before you can make that decision, yes, that they are competent. And it might be that in that situation, you assess them in a different way to what you did before. So if they went off and did a workbook on their own, it might be that this time they have some time to go away and learn some information and do some preparation. And then they come and they sit with you in a Zoom session and you go through and answer that in that setting. It may be that they struggle with that verbal communication and they're better at writing things down, in which case you would have a session that you're online with them, and instead of being verbal questioning, you might have that on the screen and they're typing answers for you as you're on there with them, just to make sure that they can do that, because sometimes students are going to struggle doing that in a verbal situation, and some of them would prefer to be writing down. Some students struggle with writing down and would prefer to do that verbally. So it depends on the requirements of your training package as to how you need to assess. If the unit says this must be written, then it must be written, or if it must be verbal, then you must do that. But you can make those reasonable adjustments within the confines of the training package. Stephen's asked, how do we prevent copy and paste from the learner guide if they have access to PDF? Okay, so it comes down to the design of your questions and the way that you ask the questions. So if you're asking them to list 5 principles of sales, and in your learner guide, you have got a PDF with 5 principles listed, they're going to copy and paste that, or even retype it, like not copy and paste, but retype it. What you should be trying to do is getting them to put that into some kind of context or explain in some way. So your question might be asking it differently to how it's presented in the learner guide. So if it's 5 dot points, you might ask them to write a sentence about how they would apply each one, just to make it a little bit different so that it's not a copy and paste exercise, because this is what ASQA is saying. It becomes a tick and flick exercise. It's the students' skills in copy and pasting or retyping rather than demonstrating that they have that knowledge. So it's about the way that your questions are worded rather than being able to just take that straight copy from what you've got in your learner guide. Okay, so when it comes to our authenticity, we have a few other online system enhancements that we can use. One is video evidence, so uploading or direct recording into a system. And so that's going to be, a student providing us with some direct evidence that they might be explaining something. So you might, instead of having them filling out a workbook, they might explain what their responses would be. Photographic evidence to show that they've done something. Now just be careful with photos because photos are a little bit different to a video. A video, you can record somebody doing something. A photo is going to be a final product or a stage. And it might be that one person comes and they hold onto the shovel that's halfway through digging a hole, and they pose and have their photo taken, and then the next student comes in and holds the shovel as they're halfway through digging the hole. So be careful with the photographic evidence. You're not relying on photos for your full practical evidence. You wouldn't go and fill out an observation checklist or a decision-making tool based on a series of photographs. You would need that to be video so that you can see that the student's actually doing it rather than just set photos at different stages. The next one, touchscreen signatures on declarations. So being able to have signatures from students. Now keep in mind, there is a difference between an actual signature online or an electronic signature and a graphic of a signature. So having a PNG or a JPEG of a signature and inserting that picture on a page is not considered an electronic signature. It's not considered legally acceptable. Okay, so don't go having a Word document where you just plonk in a graphic of a signature. You need to actually be going through a process through software that has a digital signature. And whether that's using a touch screen and signing where it recognizes that this is a signature and it puts it in place, or it's like in Adobe where it has an electronic signature where it goes through that process of making it linked to an email address and those sorts of things. That is a different item compared to an image of a signature. So please don't use images. They won't be accepted at audit. Another one there is a geomap, and that's where we can say, well, where the student was when they've completed this assessment, and a student timeline. So all the different things that the student's done, it's all time stamped, date stamped. This is the order that they did things in. This is what they've submitted when. So these are ways that we can look at authenticity as well and make sure that we've got evidence of what has happened when. So Kelly's, yes, Rob?
I was just going to add to that. We've seen some great examples in the past of companies using video instead of statements. So rather than signing a statement, actually having students record themselves reading out a statement or a declaration saying that they will do this, they will do that, they have read this and they agree to do that, which we thought was very good. And the GeoMap, whenever learners log in, we've had clients that have identified that students or people in India were completing assessments for learners. And we even had an RTO that identified that an assessor was logging in under students' accounts and completing assessments. So it's a really good kind of stop check to make sure that you're kind of protecting yourself there.
Definitely. It's funny sometimes because assessors may not be aware of some of the capabilities and might do things that get them caught out. Like we would hope that that's not the norm and that was just something random, but we do need to have these things in place just to make sure. We've just got a comment there from Kelly. If a verbal response is provided, is it enough evidence to state learner verbally explained how the ICS works, or do we need to paraphrase in writing what they said? You would need to put in what it was that they've provided you as an answer that is satisfactory on that assessment tool. So if you had the form in Cloud Assess where you've got what your sample question was, you would have somewhere to record exactly the items that the student has given you to be a satisfactory response. So you do need to have that, what is it that they've given you? So if they're not writing the answer, you have to record it. Kylie, my signature differs every time and every device I use. Mine too. Yeah, sometimes I get a delivery from Australia Post and it looks nothing like my signature. I suppose it's going and having a look at, like Rob said, the timeline and the date stamp and who's done that when. And it might be that you use the video as an extra option on top of just having that, that signature. The other option is not necessarily using the signature on a tablet, but having that digital signature that goes through a device where you're using a login or an email to confirm that this is your signature. Things that are used on DocuSign and those sorts of things, or legal documents. Final tip. How do you cover your performance evidence in online assessment? So currently, how are you covering off on your performance evidence in online assessment? Now, the reason I'm asking this, the common non-compliance that ASCO has identified is around using case studies and scenarios where students would explain what they would do. So it's good to see Ashley and Brushing saying role plays, observations and projects. That's good. That's what we want to see. We want to see that we have got actual completion of something. And Kylie said screen sharing of a completed work product. Good. And now this is going to come down to what your training product area is. Okay, so different subject areas will be different evidence that they're going to need to provide to you. So it is different for hospitality as opposed to something like financial services. But we need to make sure that students aren't just telling us how they would do something. So yeah, Angie said they still need to come in and complete some things at a practical level. We don't want to get to a stage, well, it's been a common non-compliance, so it has been happening. We don't want to be seeing people saying, okay, well, this is too hard to do a practical on, so we're just going to ask the student what they would do. We need to make sure that we've got the students actually performing the practical work rather than explaining how they would get around it. So the final tip relates to the coverage of both knowledge and skills in our units of competency, because a lot of the time what's being covered is the knowledge and not necessarily the skills appropriately. So we'll jump to the next slide. Thanks, Rob. So these are the common non-compliances that have been identified. When it comes to knowledge assessment, sometimes there isn't enough rigour in the questions, and it's all coming back to the copy and paste. So list 5 things, what are the 3 broad skills required for such and such. So all things that a student can actually just take off the learner guide somewhere or off the internet somewhere and just type it out. And there's not a lot of thinking around it. So we need to make sure, especially once we get from Cert 3 and above, that we've got a level of rigour in those questions. Cert 1 and 2. Cert 1 and 2 are going to be more around the multiple choice, fill in the blanks, those sorts of things, rather than having a big explanation. So it's not going to be as much rigour, but also they're trying to have a variety of things for the Cert 1 and 2 students, but also, you know, what would you do in this situation? There is often a heavy reliance on auto marking. Now, you've got different options in the way that you can set up questions, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with good multiple choice questions. You need to make sure, though, that it's not obvious what the answer is. Students have to really, really think about it, and they have to know their content to be able to give the right answer. So it is a skill to be able to design good multiple choice questions. Now, I did an accounting degree at uni, and well, part of an accounting degree, and we had multiple choice exams for every accounting subject, and boy, were they hard. They were really, really hard. So I'm a believer that multiple choice exams or questions or, you know, activities can be rigorous. It's not always going to be a case that the answer is obvious. Assessment of foundation skills is often missed out. So we need to make sure that our foundation skills are included through both our knowledge assessment and our practical assessment. Our practical is most of the time going to include things such as oral communication and interacting with others and teamwork and those sorts of things. Whereas our theory work might include things like reading, writing, numeracy, etc. So we need to make sure that that's not getting left out and that we are including that rather than just focusing on the other components of the unit. Authenticity we've already talked about. And it's as Simone has just said, can you use auto marking and back up with the verbal conversation? Yes, that's exactly what you would do. So if you've got a whole lot of questions that have been auto marked, have that conversation with the students just to back up that it is their work and that they do understand what they're looking at. And the last one there, not related to practical application. We need to make sure that the practical is taken into consideration. And it might be that some of these knowledge questions are asked about the practical that they've done. And they might do a practical first and then get asked questions about the process they followed or why did they choose a particular tool. And that way, it's actually not just listing off 10 tools, but which tool did you choose and why? So it actually relates the knowledge to the practical. And that's something that's being looked at. Okay, so our practical assessment, as I mentioned before, reliance on asking how something would be done or in a case study rather than actually doing it. And that's probably the most common non-compliance when it comes to the practical work, as well as leaving out the foundation skills and the decision-making tools, which we've already talked about as well. So don't just ask a student how they would do it, put them in the situation like you're saying, where you've got role plays or you've got something that they're actually doing and making sure that they're doing the practical rather than just talking about what they would do, because it's very different when you're in that situation. So I'll just give you the summary of the tips on the next slide. 4 tips today. Firstly, make sure you've got your reliability of your judgments, having your checklists, decision-making rules, and your assessor guides. Okay, and that can all be built into your online system. Making sure that we've got validity and authenticity of those third-party reports, and by having them log in and provide that, you're going to have that extra sense of insurance that this is coming from them rather than the students actually, doctoring something up or changing something. Assisting with authenticity by having students sign their declarations and the range of other enhancements that you can use through the assessment system. And finally, making sure you've got both the knowledge and skills at the right level, including foundation skills. So they're those top 4 tips that I've talked about today, just briefly. And I've just got a question there. There's 2 questions. Sasha said with role play, some students are uncomfortable recording themselves. Is it okay to call them, discuss over the phone, and then screenshot the call details while ticking off on the checklist? That's a tricky one there, because it's going from them taking part in a role play to you having a conversation about what they would do. So you'd probably want to still run it as a role play rather than having a conversation discussing. That's taking it out of that context of actually being practical. Then Clint said with authenticity, we need to have a video as well if it's an online practical demonstration. Observation checklist is sufficient. No, so in terms of, if you're doing this online, you might do this as live online, in which case you don't have to have it as a recorded video. It might be that they are live with you online and you're filling out that observation checklist at the time, and that's fine. But sometimes in that online situation, it might not be live, and so students might be uploading a video for you to mark instead of being live. Okay, so that's the difference. So it would be that they're doing it at a different time and providing you a video recording of that to mark off on your checklist. With regard to practical evidence, something like participate in safe work practices, an AR or game or role play. Yeah, yep. So if you've got augmented reality or virtual reality or role play, as long as they're in a practical situation where they're doing something rather than just telling you what they would do. Where can we check what is acceptable as an assessment tool for the level of the qualification? This comes into the Australian Qualifications Framework and actually looking in the AQF around the types of questions or the types of things that you would be doing at each level. So the document you need is the Australian Qualifications Framework, or the AQF, and it talks about the types of things a student at each level should be able to do. So when it looks at level 1, the characteristics are described as being able to recall basic factual knowledge. So you know that that's going to be, your simple questions. When you get up to a certificate 3 or 4, it's talking about being responsible for others. It's about being able to apply solve problems in known situations and those sorts of things. So it sort of gives you an idea of the types of things you would need to do at each level. And Simone has asked, does the assessor interview need to cover off on all elements? No. So that sort of interview is really just to give you the idea that, yes, this is the student that did the work, and I'm just confirming that they went through the process. So it's not like it's going to be a whole nother assessment. It's going to be enough of an interview for you to say, I am confident that this student did that work. Okay. So I'll let you type in any other questions that you might have, but I'll pass back to Rob because he's got a few things to take you through.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. And on behalf of everyone, I think that was a great session. It's always good to hear from an expert where the boundaries lie sometimes and common shortfalls in audits and things like that. So thanks for your time. I'm sure everyone appreciated it. I know I wrote a few notes and picked up on a few comments. So that's fantastic. I'm sure everyone will have felt the same.
Thank you.
So do you just want to explain briefly what the VetTech conference is about, knowing that that's a big thing coming up?
Sure. So on the 5th of June, we're holding VetTech. We were going to do this as a face-to-face 2-day conference. And it was going to be sort of 1 day for practitioner focus and 1 day around RTO management operations focus. But because of COVID-19, we've actually had to change that. So we're going to be splitting it up, and we're going to have an initial 1 day event on the 5th of June, which will focus on the practitioner getting online, making sure you've got compliant assessment. Rob's actually going to be talking about assessment and a whole range of other things. So in the morning, we start off around like the strategy of online learning and making sure you know where you're going with things. We talk about engaging learners, accessibility, cyberbullying, whole range of different things in the middle of the day, and then the afternoon is all going to be based around the compliance side of things. So yeah, that's coming up for the 5th of June, and details for that one is on the Vet Guru's website.
That's great. Thanks very much. So yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you there. Well, I'll continue through the presentation. We've got a few slides, but nothing should take too long. So we'll just get across this. So again, as Kerry said, if you've got any questions relating to what Kerry's brought up and what Kerry's been going over, or what we're going to go through now, then please ask them as we go. And if we can't catch them as we go, we're going to catch them at the end in a bit of a wrap up. So feature updates. There's some great new stuff that's either just been launched or just about to be launched, and we're pretty excited about how we've pushed forwards into some of this space pretty quickly, particularly in light of the fact that this kind of distance learning and distance working is really on the forefront. So for the first time today, we're going to officially unveil our new learner app, which is pretty cool. We're going to have a quick look at the posts feature, which is a new course feature enabling your assessors or admins to create posts to share with the cohort of the course, and people on the course can reply with comments or collaborate with discussion around those posts. So that's pretty cool. And then we've got some updates to the library, which come hand in hand with the new learner app, I guess. So first things first, we'll have a look at the learner app. So really what we've done is we've done a complete rebuild of the learner interface. So as it says on the second point there, there's a technology split. So current Cloud Assess as we know it is the same solution, whether you're an admin logging in, whether you're an assessor logging in, and whether you're a student logging in. All the technology is the same, and there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes on to make sure that we present the right information to the right user that comes in. What we've done is we've actually split that technology. So now the learner app that we're going to be rolling out soon is purely going to be for the learner. And as a function of that, we've really honed in on exactly what those learners need to see, what information they're presented with, and how they interact with that information based on what we've learned over the last few years, based on input we've had from clients, and we've really essentially given it a complete overhaul with user experience or the user interface in mind. So we'll have a look actually live in this solution in a second, but the learner app is relatively simple compared to, for example, an administrator or an assessor. You know, they're not looking at user profiles other than their own. They're not looking at multiple courses or lists of hundreds of records or hundreds of courses. So we've really focused on providing what information is relevant in a kind of timely and front and center basis. So this is the learner dashboard. We've simplified the menu down the side, so there's less confusion or less to look at. And really everything on the course is about information that you would want to access to get jobs done, whether you want to see how you're progressing with a course. And if you're on multiple courses at the same time, you'd see multiple tiles showing your progress. But also straight from the dashboard, you can go and access either an overview of your course, specific units, assessments, or your learning resources associated with that course. Again, with your completion status for that course there. Straight underneath there, we've got a list of records to do. So a learner might not want to interrogate the course or interact. They might just want to get straight in and go in through their assessments if they're familiar with the system and whatnot. So those records that they can interact with that may be due on certain dates are available straight on the dashboard there. Thanks, James. So straight away off the dashboard, we can either access the assessments that are to do, the forms that are to do, and if you use the unit cover sheets, some organisations do release them to learners, some don't. If you do release them to learners and they're records for the learners to submit, then you'll get units appearing there. Beyond there, we've got the number of units completed with a list of achievements there, so almost a kind of gamification status there. And we can access that list through clear buttons that are all designed throughout and common throughout. And that's same with the RTO and the contact. We can click to email, click to call, or click to access our profile and update our profile straight there from the dashboard. Okay, another major view that the learner will interact with is the course view. And here we've got the course presented in terms of an overview of the course, as you see there, and that's either from the perspective of a desktop device or a mobile device that you'll see on the right hand side there. So full responsive layout, and it changes appropriate to what you're trying to show people, obviously. But of course, we don't want to overwhelm a learner with loads of units that they haven't got access to anything at the moment. So it's really focused on what units have you got things to do on at the moment. So you'll present units where you've got work to do. Now that information will be available in the background all the time, but it's front and center. Stuff that requires action is front and center. If we want to see our units or see our assessments, resources and everything, there's the different tabs that we can go through and dive down. But really front and center is stuff that we need. And I'll come back to the questions if you bear with me, sorry. And then straight away off your contacts. So you might have a course administrator, you might have an assigned assessor. They'll all be listed here so that you can click a button and email that contact straight off the course. Again, we've got progress on the unit, and again, we've got the number of assessments that we've got completed. Now, if I clicked on this unit, we'd see the next screen, and we'll have a look live in a second. So I've just clicked a unit of competency. Straight away, we can see all the assessments that I've got that are available for me to work on. So we can see the status, which attempt number on, which ones are due at certain points. We've also put hand in hand a view that's front and center of all the resources. All right, Kelly, we'll catch you. We'll be sending out a video recording if people need to go. So no problem if you need to chip off, because I know we're running a bit behind. But yeah, front and center now, alongside the unit. When you dig into the unit, you'll see the resources associated with that unit of competency. So the learner update, along with the learner app, we've really thought about how those resources are consumed. And again, you've got an alternative view on the mobile device that's very easy to filter and scroll through and see what you're wanting to look at. So in terms of the live view, it's, let's see, how do I bring this on? I'll just minimize this window and then I can pull this across. As we see there, we've got the ability to access all these different areas on the course. I can go straight to an assessment record, which looks pretty much the same. But if I go to the overview of my course, I can see there I've got the people I can get in touch with, or I can click to see my unit, and whether I want to filter by things to do, records that are in progress, what's been submitted or completed, we can see there, and we can access all of those different resources that are available. If we go into one of the individual records, whoops, I'm not sure if we can access these yet, so bear with me. Now that's still in testing, I'm afraid, so we'll have to show you that another time. But yeah, everything's a lot clearer, a lot simpler, and really minimal. So really that the learners will have a lot easier time understanding the information that's presented with them and be able to interact with that and have a better experience throughout the process. I'll just reflect on some of the comments that have been made there. Looks great, thanks James. We're not going to launch this into mobile. With all the mobile technology, all the web-based technology that's available at the moment, that technology is just getting better and better. So the quality of the interactions and the way we can design that's just getting better all the time. We are looking at a different solution for the offline capabilities, which we're looking to get into next financial year, early next financial year. But yeah, this is going to stay as a web-based application accessible through any browser. Simple for the non-tech savvy. Yeah, that's where the kind of focus has been. Will units they have completed disappear off this list? Yes, as they're completed, units won't appear because they're not units to do anymore. But we'll always have a view of units, whether they're complete or not, within the units on the course there. Would be great if unit record only showed released assessments for that learn, not all assessments, which includes unreleased. Yeah, it's, I guess it's 6 of one and half a dozen of another. The to-do assessments on the dashboard will always only be stuff that's released to the learner. So that's always front and center, just the work they need to focus on. But as they dig into a unit of competency, if they went into a unit and couldn't see anything there, that may equally cause confusion. So we've kind of made a decision there. Another session, have you tested the application for a landscape view on small screen phones? Yeah, as you see there, we've got different views that's responsive for the different styles of screens. So the layout just responds to the device and how that's presented. James has just asked as well, when's the rollout? We're just going through testing now and finishing touches really. So in coming weeks, it'll be ready to start rolling out to clients. It's going to roll side by side. Thanks, Gavin. Nice to see you. It's going to roll out side by side to the current solutions. So learners or your organization will be able to choose what's presented, and then there'll be a hard and fast transition date later down the line. But really, we didn't want to roll it out to the masses on day one. We need to roll out and take a phased approach to make sure that that we're controlling it and managing risk and burden on the servers. No, there won't be an additional charge to use this. It's all part of their standard subscription. So that's something I personally am really excited about. I think it's really going to transform how the learners interact with the system. We're all really excited to get that into everyone's hands. With that, we've done a recent update that changes the sort of content that you can provide for your learners. So within the resource library, which isn't quite as front and center as some would like, well, we've attacked that with the new Learner app, which hopefully provides a bit of a step change for everyone. But now within the content library, you can also add links. So that's great for, yes, we'll be creating a learner manual, Emily, that'll be launched within the app when it goes. The team are just working through that now. Yeah, so now you can add links in the resource library, which is fantastic for Google Docs and things like that. Or you might add a link to a video resource and not actually embed the video or what have you. So that means if you use a Google Doc or something like that, you can actually keep that document up to date offline, and it always updates and keeps up to date, rather than providing an actual file that you would need to go in and update and delete and replace within Cloud Assess. We've also got HTML5 content that can be now provided through the course and the resource library. So you've always been able to add HTML5 content into assessments, so learners can consume them as part of their assessment process, but now they're available in the resource library. And with great tools like Articulate 360, which is an online builder for kind of interactive content, you can create some really nice looking content very easily and then embed that within your course. So again, a great update, and that's all available now. The next update, I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but we've created a new posts feature, and this is attached to the courses that we've got. So now when you go to a course, you'll see, let me just pull across here. You'll see at the top of the screen, you'll see this new posts link that's available now. So we've made a bit of noise about it, and hopefully you've seen those communications and had a bit of a play with this. But this is a configurable option. So you can edit your course and decide if you want this switched on or not. So you don't have to adopt. But if you do, on the course, let's have a look now. Let's go to the actual post center here. On the course, your trainer and assessor or administrators that have got access to do this on your course can actually create posts add these posts, and the learners can actually respond with comments and reply to each other's comments on there. You can delete your own comments if you make comments. If you're an admin or power user, if a student makes an inappropriate comment, you can delete that as well. But it's a great solution for either sharing links, resources, videos, Google Docs, as we said, or your Zoom meeting links or anything like that at the moment. So a great forum, if you like, for collaboration that, again, we're very excited about. So just see some more of these questions. Makes me want to be a student. Yeah, I'm not sure if I missed my student days or not. I'm not sure I could go through those again. Will the learners get notification of new posts? No, that's not available yet. It's something, it's a bit of a shortfall we're aware of. So watch this space. There's a few things that we want to do to improve this, but in light of the current situation, we just wanted to get something out there as quickly as possible. So there's still the announcements tool that you can use on the dashboard. You can always email out a link to learners and provide them a link to the post page. But yeah, watch this space. It's going to get better and better. We just wanted to get something usable out there as quickly as possible for our customer base. You can't turn off replies. You can only switch posts on or off. So any suggestions like that, fantastic. I'll make a note of these ones and I'll get them uploaded into the help center so they can be considered for the dev priorities sessions that we run every so often. And then we can give it some focus and attention. You can delete inappropriate comments, but not block inappropriate students. So again, watch this space. And there's a million and one things we could probably do with this or go with this solution. So again, we're pretty excited about getting something out there. So as you use it, let's see how it goes. But yeah, we have inappropriate students time to time, unfortunately. Goodbye, Christian, and we'll send you the video. There's just one more piece left. And then another piece that we're going to be working on soon, or in the next quarter or so, we'll be looking to have it released, is one-to-one messaging between students and admins or students and their assessors, which again, will be a fantastic piece. So this one-to-one messaging, rather than having external messaging and a trail of evidence that sits outside of your assessment solution, we're going to build this within Cloud Assess. So you'll have a retained string of communications that show engagement between the learner and your team. So again, we're very excited about this piece of work, but this is kind of just to let you aware of where that's going. I'll just hop on to questions now. I'm aware we're about 10 minutes over. So has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask before we say goodbye?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Who's this?
Yeah, my name's Emily. How you going?
Hi, Emily.
Slightly off topic, but thanks for today, especially those releases. That was really informative, and I think they'll be great. One issue that's coming up a lot for us is the usability in terms of access levels. So we're really struggling with the different levels being student, trainer, admin and power user. Where we've got quite a number of trainers who have higher level functionality within their roles that need to be able to do things in the back end, deploy, those types of things. And we're struggling with that because we can't upgrade the trainer access to allow them to do those other functionalities, or for example, if they're managing other trainers, because if we put them as a power user, they can't then be assigned to students and they miss out on all the notifications that the trainers get at a trainer level. So
Yeah.
is there any timelines on when you might be looking at that? Is that on the agenda for you guys to look at?
Well, there's a solution that Christian's put up there. So can I just ask you to mute your microphone a second? Sorry. Yeah, Christian's put up a solution which may not be ideal, but yet it's possible you could create a second power user account for them so that they could, and James has added the same. You could give them an admin account as well as a power user or an assessor account. At the moment, we've expanded the user roles quite a lot. were a lot simpler before you came on board, Emily. We're always keen to hear feedback and understand different scenarios. At the moment, I don't think there's any intent or we've identified any requirement to kind of bridge this gap. But with a bit more input, I'll probably look to take it offline and get someone to get in touch with you, and maybe they can take you through a few options or better understand the solution and your requirements a bit better. So maybe I can arrange that for you, and that'll be a better outcome. Watch this space, Emily. I'll get someone to get in touch. Thank you. Can I just ask where you're from? Because I just know your first name. Ah, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Emily. All right. Do we have any other questions for anyone? Okay. Well, please feel free to drop any more questions in or get in touch if you think of any more that come up after the session. Thanks again for everyone attending. It's great to get kind of connected, even though we're all apart as it seems at the moment. Thanks again, Kerry, for coming in and spending some time with us. I'm sure everyone found that useful. It was a great session. As said, we've worked with Kerry on a number of occasions, whether it's PD for the team in the office here. I know she works with a number of our clients for the compliance advice and guidance, training sessions, or the Vet Tech conference that's coming up soon. So that's all exciting stuff. If you've got technical issues or anything, or you're actively in a trial at the moment, feel free to get in touch with your relationship manager or who's taking you through that process. Other than that, keep in touch. We'll look forward to the next session. These sessions should be going on about quarterly, and we're looking to either engage an expert like Kerry, or we'll be looking to get a case study from actual clients across the country so that they can share good rollouts or adoption experiences that they've had to give us kind of best in class sharings that can benefit everyone. So I'll thank you again for coming along. Great to connect, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day and keep safe, everyone. Thank you.